iPhones are taking over North Korea's smartphone market, or at least that's what this website's data suggests. And as someone who's been trying to send an AirTag to North Korea for over a year now, this information could be game changing. But the iPhone seems like an unlikely candidate for North Korea's #1 smartphone, which begs the question, how accurate is this data? So in this video, we'll dig deeper into this phenomenon, and I'll be having a chat with the CEO of the statistics company that's behind the numbers.
We can see that some North Koreans are accessing the internet.
We'll also analyze footage from North Korea's newly emerging influencers to see if we can spot an iPhone. When I first had the idea of sending an AirTag to North Korea, I knew that the only way this could possibly work was if several conditions were met. Those conditions were: 1, my AirTag would have to come within close proximity of an iPhone, iPad, or Mac, and 2, that device would have to be connected to the internet. The chance of either of those conditions being met was low, or at least that was my assumption. But if I'm being honest, that made it all the more exciting. If I got one ping from North Korea, just one ping, that would tell us a lot about a country that we know very little of. And even if the AirTag made it to North Korea but didn't ping at all, at the very least, I might learn about the mailing routes used for getting packages into the DPRK. I figured excitement was guaranteed no matter what. Nevertheless, being the curious person I am, I wanted to know what my odds were. So I jumped on Google, searched North Korean smartphone market share, and I was shocked to find a website called Statcounter, which claimed to have data on the DPRK's smartphone market. But right away, I could tell that the data was off. 1 month Huawei was the market leader, then it was LG, then Xiaomi, then Samsung, then Apple. But when you look at the data for a country like Japan, you can see the statistics are far more consistent. The sporadic nature of North Korea's stats didn't seem very reliable. Regardless, I wanted to understand where and how they got this data. Well, it turns out Statcounter is a website analytics service, similar to Google Analytics. So if you have a website, you can add Statcounter's tracking code, and they'll gather all sorts of information on your viewers, where they're from, what device they're using, what screen size they have, all that. But get this, their tracking code is installed on 1.5 million websites worldwide. So whenever someone with a North Korean IP address visits any of those sites, Statcounter can grab that data and use it to formulate these statistics. Okay, so that all makes sense. But how much data do they have on North Korea? Well, after digging through their website, I found out that they also publish the sample sizes for each country. At the time, their sample size for North Korea was 500, which is not a lot. So I didn't think too much of it and sent my AirTag to the German embassy in Pyongyang, hoping that maybe a diplomat with an iPhone and an internet connection would receive my package. And, you know, mission accomplished. But my AirTags only made it as far as Beijing, because as I found out the hard way, North Korea's borders have been closed since January 2020 due to the pandemic. Ironically, I found this out from a North Korean via email. The guy works for DHL. Anyways, as time went by and my AirTag remained stuck in Beijing, I couldn't help but wonder if there'd been any changes in North Korea's smartphone market. So I revisited the website, and to my surprise, iPhone usage had skyrocketed. This all started in November of 2021, when 92% of North Korean IP addresses had come from iPhones. But this wasn't just a random once-off spike, because each month after that, the surge not only continued, but grew, with Apple maintaining almost 100% market share throughout 2022. Now, to be clear, I don't think this data accurately represents North Korea's actual smartphone market share. That would be stupid. But this data could be telling us their smartphone of choice when connecting to the World Wide Web, which I find really interesting. What I also found intriguing is that Statcounter knows which version of iOS these iPhones are using. And this data showed that when a new version of iOS was released, the older version would drop in usage, while the newer version would gain traction. I mean, damn, these North Koreans are keeping their iOS up to date. And iOS updates are like 1.5 gigabits. We're talking some serious data here. And coincidentally, around the same time, North Korean influencers started popping up on social media platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and even TikTok. So I'm like, okay, I guess North Korea is doing the internet now. But we'll circle back to that later. With all this new information, I knew I had to find out more about this data. So I reached out to Statcounter, asking if they could provide me with some more insights. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear back from their CEO and founder, Egon Cullen, who agreed to doing an interview.
We're I'll just fill you in briefly. So we're a web analytics service. So we have our Statcounter code installed on over 1.5 million websites all around the world. So whenever you visit a web page, we can track that, and totally anonymously and in aggregate form, we add that all together and we track how much traffic each country in the world is getting across the Statcounter network. And part of that is some North Korean traffic. So we can see that some North Koreans are accessing the internet, but it's absolutely tiny. We publish our sample size there for everyone to see, and you can see that Mount Serrat, with a population of 5,000 people, has 3 times as much internet activity as North Korea, with a population of something like, I think it's in 20 million to 25 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely the people of North Korea just must be completely restricted from using the internet. It must be only the higher level officials, only a very, very small number of people must get access to it. That's what we can see from what we're getting, yeah.
I believe when I first checked the sample size, it was around 500. With 500, how much of that is guaranteed to be from North Korea? Are there any kind of external factors which would, could alter it? For example, there are some VPN services where they claim to offer an IP address in North Korea. Could something like that affect the data? Whether or not that traffic is definitely from North Korea, we can't be guaranteed all of it is definitely 100%. We base it on the IP address, like you're saying. So we look up the IP address and we use different services to verify that, and we can tell certain VPNs, so that's easy. So you block those VPNs out? Yeah, we try to. Yeah, we try to block them out and stop them having an effect. And then you can tell from the ISPs themselves, the names and whether it's real or not. So yeah, I'm definitely happy that a good percentage of this is definitely real North Korean traffic. Yeah, I would be. Right. Okay. Interesting. Now, the first time I visited your website, the sample size, which was 500, that was from 2015. And I think what would be really interesting to know is, how has the sample changed year over year? Has it been increasing or has it been decreasing? So we've actually, we've done that again. So if you go back to the site again, you'll see we've updated it for you, so you can get the latest one for July 2022. It's increased a little bit. Again, these numbers are so tiny, I really wouldn't read into it too much. There's been a small increase, but I wouldn't read into those numbers too much when they're so tiny. I definitely wouldn't make any kind of conclusion they have more people in North Korea have access to internet now. I definitely wouldn't. I don't think there's been any big changes there. But one thing that did, raise my eyebrows was, in November 2021, out of nowhere, there's just a huge spike in iOS and Mac devices. So is that saying something? It must be, because also not only did did it increase, but it increased to the point where all the other smartphone brands were literally 0.5% market share. What do you make of that? When you zoom out, so this is what you're talking about. What happened in November 2021, and it's been like that since then. So I was just saying, so this is a little bit more substantial. It's than more the other significant, ones, right? It's a bit more significant. Yeah. You can speculate. It's definitely interesting. Something definitely happened. Yeah, there's definitely more iOS usage going on, but in terms of tracking air tags or anything, it's still such a tiny number of people have access. You would say that it is definitely, at least a portion of that traffic is definitely traffic coming from an Apple device which is connected to the internet in North Korea, right? Yeah. At least some of it, right? Yeah, that's definitely what. Yeah, which is interesting. It is, it is definitely. Our data is definitely showing that there are some users in North Korea with iOS devices. I'm definitely happy to say that, definitely, yeah. So there you have it. It's highly likely iPhones are being used to connect to the internet in North Korea. Now, under normal circumstances, I might have assumed this traffic was coming from foreign diplomats, but they all left the DPRK when the borders closed due to freedom of movement concerns. And rightfully so. And any tourists would have been booted out around the same time. That rules out a lot of external factors, leaving us with a very convincing case that these iPhones are being used by North Koreans themselves. So even though we can't make any definitive statements about North Korea's smartphone market, it's intriguing to ponder what could have caused the sudden surge in iPhone usage among the limited internet users in the country. Perhaps it goes hand in hand with the sudden surge in social media activity. So let's talk about that. Now, I'm not going to go through all of the influences. Instead, I'll focus on the one that I found most interesting. Allow me to introduce to you Songa, North Korea's first YouTuber. At least she's one of the first.
Hello everyone, I'm Song Im from Pyongyang.
She speaks English, has a British accent, loves Harry Potter, and does vlogs about her life in Pyongyang. She's talked about catching COVID, visiting a children's hospital, a water park, and even a technology center. There's also a bizarre array of unusual censorship in her videos. Broken windows, someone's legs, park benches, random individuals at the water park, and even a handbag. And then there's the smartphones. They're everywhere in her videos, though not always the same and usually attached to a selfie stick. And in this one video where Songa introduces us to her favorite North Korean dessert, I spotted what looks like an iPhone 10 or 10s. I don't know, it looks like an iPhone to me, but if any of you have a better idea of what phone this is, be sure to let me know. Now, what does all of this new information mean for me and my AirTag experiment? Well, according to a Chinese travel agency, North Korea's borders are scheduled to reopen on June the 10th, which isn't too far away. And if that turns out to be true, there's a good chance that the mailing routes will open at the same time. So if my AirTag, which is stuck at a China Post facility with a critically low battery, can survive until then, well, it might just make it in time to accomplish this crazy endeavor I set out on 2 years ago. If it does happen, subscribe and you'll be the first to hear about it.